the Primal Hunter Book 9, and I'm starting to lose interest. Hello there, namaste. So, I do enjoy this series. However, I think I understand what my issue is, because they were doing this segment of like, he's gonna go off to school, he's gonna go off to school, he's gonna go off to school, only for that to not really matter. Because I'm interested in hearing more of Reika's experience in the school, because I think it's the whole thing where I'm a huge fan of The Mark of the Fool. And that story starts off with him going off to school. Sure, they introduce you to the main story, which does take over eventually, but he's going off to college, I guess. And it's about him and his experience for the first 2 books in college. And then it goes off to a tournament arc. And then he goes back to the homeland to fight against the evil, which was spoke about in the beginning. This, in the Primal Hunter, it's different because he gets his powers, he's in the system, he starts gaining levels, and it's like, all right, he's gonna go to the school, he's gonna go to the school, he's gonna go to the school. He goes to the school, and guess what? He returns back to Earth. Even though Reika and the others are all still at school, and then he goes back to the school at the end of the book. And then at the beginning of the following book, he goes back to Earth after being in school. And then he goes back to school, and then it goes back to Earth. And it is like, and then I don't like how this one ends, because it's literally gonna be a time skip. And I mentioned this before, I'm not a fan of them. When they had that mentioned as the chapter title, I was devastated until I read, oh, it's just 3 months, that's not a big deal. Here, he's going into a dungeon that lasts 50 years in their time, but in the real world only a few months, maybe a year has passed. Because the Prima is showing up, and they need to be prepared to fight off the Prima. So he's going into this dungeon. And that's what the whole story is about, is him preparing to go into the dungeon. Him, Alakan, him facing Alakan and basically having the last word. The Yip from Yore, it seems a little interesting. They introduce, of course, another love interest for the main character. And I would have been okay if it's that typical anime joke where the main character just doesn't see it and doesn't care and doesn't reciprocate. No, he sees it and ignores it, yet jumps on it when it is convenient to him, and I'm not a fan of that. I am really not a fan of that. And it's supposed to be funny, but in the end, I don't feel like it's funny. It just feels forced, because here the sword saint was like, oh, I want my daughter to marry him. Well, he has a harem now, I don't want my daughter to marry him. There's a lot of little stuff that is just like, over time, when you just get too much of it, it just is rank the right word? It just grinds on me. It bothers me a bit, because I'm like, I wanted the college experience. I think that could have been fun to get away from like this competition and have it be more entertaining, more down to earth as things progress and then build up. And then they could have had Alakan, I forget what the guy's name is, show up later. They could have had that later and just had like 1 book dedicated to the school life. Make it entertaining before it goes back into the seriousness of everything else. Having it jump around, even though it does remind me of manga, it just doesn't feel as lively, because the character, even though I kind of felt like him at the beginning, as soon as he started just sleeping around and taking advantage, I use that loosely, because here it's like he's not, but he is. Everyone has different perspectives. Even Jake has his own moral compass, but then he doesn't have a moral compass when it's convenient to him. But in the end, it doesn't matter. It's just like the more and more it goes, like the more and more I get out of it. It is entertaining. I'll still continue it, but I'm going to definitely slow down, because it just doesn't grab me as it did in the beginning. It kind of lost me when it started going off into this not completely following an arc. Just jumping around. I don't mind that if one book goes to another point and there's still like words, like he could still be talking to his city lord. He could still be talking to everyone on the outside, communicating and things like that, but just keep us in one location instead of jumping around. And it's like the whole book cover is him fighting a massive insect. That happens in like the first half of the book, where he fights that insect queen. And then he ends up creating an insect that ends up being a royal, a very important person. And it's just like, what? I don't know. I don't know. Apparently he's building ties. I mean, at one point in time as I was going through it, it felt like, you know what? Maybe this is one of those stories where the universe exists and is trying to find out who created the universe. It's going through it. Because if you look at the galactic worm, what happens when the galactic worm starts feeding? Well, eventually he'll get to the point where he's a god rank and he can basically eat an entire universe. Well, guess what? The 93rd universe just entered the multiverse. Does that mean that there is a cosmic worm that just swallowed? Is that what the whole thing is? Is the system inside the worm's belly? Is that what it is? I mean, that's an interesting concept. That would get me interested and continue going, because every time a universe is swallowed, it's integrated into the multiverse. I mean, that's an interesting concept right there, because he created something that's brand new, but it obviously existed at one point, because he brings out the primal aspect of it. So it's the original. I mean, that's one thing I'm looking at. That's the positive I see, is that he's basically creating the universe that he himself is living in. Just, I guess, now instead of way back when. I don't know. But I do enjoy it. It just feels like it's lost some of it, because now it's jumping into a dungeon, which I'm afraid is just going to be a time skip, where they're skipping for 50 years. Leveling up very quickly. It's just going to be a quick montage just till he gets out of the dungeon and starts fighting Al Hakan again, whatever his name is. as the Viper takes on the Yip of Yore. I don't know. Still enjoy it, but at the same time, I do have issues with it. Of course, this is me. I always seem to find an issue with something. I just wish that they did have like one book, because they kept referencing it, and I was getting excited for it, only for it to not serve a purpose at all, which is the Academy. It was like, at least give us one book there. At least had us do it as soon as he got integrated. Then he had to leave because of Al Hakan in the next book, and then it changes from there, where he stops by here and there, and he basically catches up with Reika and whatever. But in the end, I mean, it's a good series. I'll continue it when I'll continue it. I'll probably find something else to read, or I'll just go back and reread some of the other ones I absolutely... Maybe go back and reread The Mark of the Fool, just because I needed that school dynamic. Yeah, but I think that's just it. The arcs just don't seem to flow naturally. I'm having issues with everything going on at once. Just stick to one thing, then cut back, or just reference it here and there. Don't just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But yeah, that's just what I was thinking. It is a good series, but time to take on something else. Thank y'all for watching. Talk to you next time. Doodles!